83 points was the total for Bam Adebayo on Tuesday, the second highest scoring mark in NBA history. The only man who stands above Bam Adebayo to have scored more points in the contest is the legendary, the record-breaking Wilt Chamberlain. It was a game that no matter where you were, if you were an NBA fan, you heard about it, and you probably tuned in because as the numbers began to rack up, it became clear that Bam was having a truly special night. But at the same time, for all the flowers that he's received afterwards, for breaking a record many deemed to be unbreakable or very, very hard to break in Kobe Bryant's 81 points, there's also been a large section of people who have done everything that they can to discredit what Bam Adebayo did last night. It has become divisive, and with that, it's safe to say that Bam Adebayo has broken the NBA. Now, if you've been paying any attention to the NBA in recent years, one thing you might notice, or one thing you might just notice in discourse, even if you're not watching, is everybody is pointing out the fact that we are seeing a scoring boom right now. Just in recent years, you saw Devin Booker score 70 points at 20 years old. A lot more recently, you've seen guys like Damian Lillard, Joel Embiid, Luka Doncic all take on that honor, as well as Donovan Mitchell. And so it seems like just more and more frequently, we're seeing more and more scoring outbursts. And then across the season, we're seeing guys like Luka, SGA, averaging these insane numbers that just because of the fact they're not the only ones doing it, we sometimes don't even give it the credit that it really deserves for just how great the scorers that they are. So with all that being said, we are in an era focused around offense right now in the NBA. But at the same time, it felt like there was a cap on just how far that scoring would go. You see, you never really saw these guys like Luka or Lillard or Mitchell go above that 71-point mark. That was about where they would stay. Luka had 73, and that kind of felt like the max, right? Because at some point, there's a limit on the human body about just how far you can go. And the fact that Wilt did that so many years ago, he was a true anomaly in every sense of the word, but you just don't see that. And so with that in mind, it felt like there was a ceiling on just how far the scoring boom would go. It felt like Kobe's record at second place would stand in the history books forever, and especially it felt like Wilt Chamberlain's record at 100 might just be unbreakable because he played 48 minutes that game, and they were feeding him the ball like no other in a way that you just really don't see in the modern NBA. It's looked down upon in terms of sportsmanship, and teams key in on that. We have smarter defenses than ever before. Maybe not as physical. You always have those debates. But in terms of smarts, in terms of IQ, I think defense is in a better place than it ever has been before. Teams know how to stop the opposing team. They put more effort into it. They just, the switching, the versatility. You just don't see 100 points being a real possibility anymore. But Bam Adebayo just got as close as anybody ever has. And with that in mind, I think he really, really did redefine how we look at the modern day scoring boom, because he broke through that glass ceiling to not just become a guy in the top 10 in the single game history books, but a guy in the top 2 all time where him and Wilt Chamberlain stand alone. No matter how good offenses are getting, you just don't expect to see that. So I think this has really shown a true shift in the way that offense has just become so more dynamic. Especially the fact that Bam Adebayo is probably not the first guy that came to mind when you would think of somebody that would do this. You would think of the aforementioned Luka, SGA, Devin Booker, Lillard in his prime. Even a guy like Steph Curry, the best shooter we've ever seen. But no, it was Bam Adebayo, the leader of a 7 seed in the Eastern Conference, a man who was averaging 18.9 points per game before this last contest. He was the one to become the second highest scorer in NBA history. So that's the first thing Bam did with this game, was he really changed the way I think that we look at the way that scoring is done now. Because it's a lot more than just the pace of it. I think you're seeing guys They're just consistently more skilled. And that's not a knock on players of the past, right? It's a different generation, different training, different everything. But in terms of scoring, I think it's better than it ever has been. And we just saw somebody break through the glass ceiling as proof of that. But the other thing he did, as I mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of discourse surrounding this game, and not all of it has been positive. You see, for everybody giving Bam his flowers, there's a lot of people pointing to the fact that he set some other records in this game. He made the most free throws ever in a game in NBA history, and he also attempted the most shots at the line that we've ever seen. And truthfully, I see where a lot of that criticism is coming from. I believe Tim McMahon said it best when he said, talking about Bam's game, he's jacking up threes triple teamed. It was honestly just awful, hideous, disgusting basketball down the stretch. I never ever want to hear about heat culture and professionalism and all that again, because that was the most blatant stat chasing I've ever seen. It was embarrassing for the Wizards and egregious for the Heat. I enjoyed the ethical 39 by Wemby more than I did the egregious 83. So McMahon was a very staunch critic there. And you kind of get where he's coming from, right? At the end of the day, there's a lot of people who, when it comes to basketball, they really, really care about the integrity of the game because they love it above all else. And truthfully, I would consider myself much the same way. I love the sport of basketball more than anything in this world. It is my favorite. I have been on sessions into break from this podcast because I'm serving as the commentator for my high school's basketball. And I've been doing so much. Now we're moving to baseball and soccer season, reporting in that regard. But at the end of the day, right, everybody has a say in this one. And there's a lot of people who are going to focus on the integrity of the game, and they don't feel like this lived up to that. And if I'm being honest, watching those last couple of minutes of the game, I didn't find it to be particularly enjoyable basketball. It was enjoyable because of the historic precedent, wondering just how high the number could go. Could he beat Kobe's record? Could he even tie it as the game went on? But in that one, you just saw the intentional fouls. The Wizards were fouling other Heat players, and then the Heat were fouling the Wizards on purpose just to get the ball back in Bam's hands. And that's kind of what a lot of people will complain about when it comes to modern NBA, is you get down to it, especially in close games, it just becomes a free throw contest. This one wasn't even a close game, and you still saw that because everybody knew the numbers that Bam was having that night. So there's been a lot of talk about the legitimacy of it, especially in comparison to Kobe, who was 18 for 20 from the line in his 81-point performance. But at the end of the day, I believe that no matter where you stand on Bam's game right now, he has forever etched himself into the history books, and you will remember this game, whether you liked it or whether you didn't. It's going to stand forever. I think Giannis said it best. Quote, "It doesn't matter how you get there. All that matters is that you got it. Like in 30 years from now, nobody's going to remember how many free throws he shot. I don't think I remember how many shots Kobe had, or how many free throws he's made, or threes. All you remember is 81, Wilt 100. You don't remember how they scored. So at the end of the day, he got 83 points." End quote. And I agree with that. I've never really heard about how many free throws Kobe took. That's never been a point of discussion. And yes, there were a lot more in this one. But at the end of the day, when you go back in history and you see this game, you're not going to have an asterisk next to it. You might remember it that way, but 83 points is 83 points. This was, whether you liked it or not, one of the greatest performances we've ever seen in the history of the NBA. It was a scoring performance almost unlike any other. And I wasn't the biggest fan of the way it came about. I know a lot of people weren't. But at the end of the day, Bam Adebayo just had a game for the ages. And when we look back on it, I think we are going to look back and be lucky that we were able to watch this game and watch history happen in such a historic moment, in such a remarkable scoring performance, live and in person. What time it was to be live, what time it was to watch Bam Adebayo score 83 points in an NBA game.